Hi, we're here at Steve White Motors today to introduce a new product, a high-performance fuel rail from A2Speed. I've got Eric from A2Speed with us, and Josh is one of our performance part specialists, and he's also going to be our technician today. We've got a 2015 Challenger RT Scat Pack with a 6.4 liter HEMI engine, and we're going to be installing some fuel rails. Having said that, I'm going to turn the floor over to our two gentlemen.
You'll also notice that this 2015 Challenger Scat Pack has some of our up-and-coming new products. It does have a set of A2Speed valve covers with a built-in oil separator. We're also using today our Challenger specific fender cover to protect this beautiful car. Eric, explain some of the components we're going to receive in this fuel rail kit. I see here on the table we've got this damper. Can you explain what this does?
Sure. This is a pulsation damper. So because we're dealing with a fluid and not a gas, it doesn't compress. When the injectors are pulsing several hundred times a minute, they create a harmonic effect inside of the fuel rail. And what that can do is it can disrupt the fuel pressure in the other injectors that are shared on that rail. So what we've done is put a port in the bottom of the fuel rail where the pulse damper screws into. You'll notice that we put it as near to the center of the fuel rail as we can get and still clear features that are on the intake manifold. So what this does is it's a lot like a shock absorber. It absorbs the pulsation and harmonics that are being created inside this rail and allows the removal of fuel spikes and gives you a smoother fuel delivery.
Eric, while you've got this fuel rail, I noticed that it's made out of aluminum and it's got some different features. Can you explain what the advantages to some of these features are?
Absolutely. So first of all, it is an aircraft grade extrusion and machining. You'll notice that it has these fins on it. They actually serve a purpose. Other than looking good, they also help add surface area, giving you the ability to dissipate heat more quickly. Every fuel rail, anything that's metal that's attached to the engine is going to gather heat in there. But the car's factory fuel rails are stamped steel. Stamped steel is not as good a conductor of heat as aluminum is. So what's going to happen is the stamped steel fuel rail is going to gather the heat and retain it and transfer that heat back into the fuel. Whereas the aluminum part, because it is a superior conductor of temperature, is going to allow the lower temperature of the fuel to reduce the temperature of the rail itself, and your overall fuel temperature will go down.
That's great. Now tell me about the size of this. It looks a lot larger than what I'm used to seeing.
This is a true Dash 8. Most fuel rails that are currently available for the 6.4 and the 5.7 HEMI engines are actually Dash 6 rails. The dash number refers to the diameter of the fuel rail on the inside.
We also get some great hardware for these rails as well. Here we have, is this the end cap, I could assume?
Right. First of all, at A2Speed we exclusively feature Red Horse performance parts. They make what we consider to be the best AN hoses and fittings on the market today. This particular part, and you'll get two of them, are what we call an O-ring style port plug. These two port plugs will fit on the end or the radiator side of the fuel rails. If you start out with these fuel rails and end up going to a larger displacement engine or higher power or add nitrous, you have the ability to put a front crossover. That's an important feature in the higher performance arena. The other thing that you're going to get is this, which is a Dash 8 O-ring port to AN flare. This will be used on one side of your crossover hose. We also supply a pre-made nylon E85 compatible crossover hose. This hose has a swivel and what we call a dual swivel, which means that this part right here can be adjusted and this direction can also be adjusted. Again, this is pre-made, so you don't have to cut it, you don't have to do anything other than take it out of the box, apply your lubricant, and install it directly on the fuel rail system.
Eric, the last piece we haven't talked about is this fuel connection. What's unique about this?
So this is the part that's actually made by A2Speed. We're really proud of it. This is a standard SAE EFI fuel rail or fuel line quick connect. And what we've done is we've adapted that into this banjo fitting that allows you to take your crossover hose and attach it directly to the part that fits into the fuel rail. In this case, a -8 O-ring port. This part has been specifically designed to have the highest flow capacity, and it looks fantastic. Most of the time when you're doing your fuel rail connections, this ends up being a stack-up, which means you'll have like a flare fitting right here, and then you'll have some sort of a block right here, and then you'll have this fitting that will have probably an MPT connection on it, and then you're going to have another fitting on the back of it. So this one part replaces as many as 4, sometimes even 5 individual connections. One thing you'll notice is that the size of both the hole and of the depth and the inside cut on this part are the largest that you can safely make it without taking your cross-sectional thickness and making it too thin and having the part susceptible to breaking. One of the cautions that we like to tell people about this, these washers have a small shoulder that they rest on, and that aligns them so that when you put this on there, the washer is perfectly aligned with the face of the banjo. One thing that's important is as you're assembling this part, you make sure that the washer is on the shoulder and this part moves freely. If you can get a close-up there, you can barely see that shoulder. You take the washer and place it on there, and then make sure that it doesn't move off of the shoulder. Put your O-ring on, and you're ready to go.
That brings us to the disassembly of our stock fuel rails and the assembly of our new fuel rails. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that this vehicle has a depressurized fuel system. We've done that by removing the fuse and running the engine until it is completely stalled. So to depressurize the fuel system on this 2015 Challenger, we are going to access the fuse box in the trunk and locate the fuel pump fuse. What we will do is go ahead and pull that fuse. And once we have that fuse, we will then start the vehicle to depressurize the fuel system until the engine stalls. Now there may be still some pressure in the fuel system, so we want to make sure we protect ourselves. We're going to use some towels to soak up any excess fuel that may leak out of the fuel connection. And then we will go ahead and disconnect the fuel line from the rail. And we'll let that drain any fuel that may come out of there. To remove the rail, we are going to need a 14mm socket, deep well. And we'll remove these ball studs holding the fuel rail on. Next, we'll need to disconnect all of our electrical connectors from our fuel injectors and remove any vacuum harnesses that may be in our way. There's little red connectors that keep these plugged in. It can be a little difficult to work sometimes, but you'll need to pop each of those. And then we'll simply work each rail out of place. Our next procedure is going to be removing the fuel injectors from the fuel rail. We're going to have to remove these retaining clips that hold the fuel injector in the rail. We can expand this clip, push it off, like so. Once we remove these clips, these injectors will pull right out of the rail. Don't want to lose the O-ring, and we'll pull the rest of these out. Once you've removed all of the injectors from the fuel rail, you'll want to inspect each injector and its O-rings. The O-rings may be stuck in the intake manifold. You will want to check that if you have one missing, like we did. You'll want to make sure these are all clean and free of any grit or grime and reinstall them back on the injector. We need to assemble the fuel rails. The first thing we'll do is install a damper onto this center port on the fuel rail. We've already used Teflon tape to make sure that it seals. Then we'll just thread onto the fuel rail. Here's our 7/8. We also need to install the caps on our fuel rail. You'll want to make sure you have these orientated correctly. There's a machined groove on the driver's side fuel rail to clear the oil fill on your Hemi. So that will be the front of this fuel rail. This fitting here will fit on the passenger side fuel rail. Snug that down. This unique fitting fits on our driver's side fuel rail. We want to ensure that these washers are flush and sitting on the shoulder, and that it is free to rotate. Back of the driver's side fuel rail. Thread into place, and we'll leave this a little loose to allow for some adjustment. When we're installing the injectors in the fuel rail and into the intake manifold, we want to make sure we lube these O-rings so that they can be installed easily. It's easiest putting some lube on the towel.
It's actually different. I meant to write it down.
Lubing the injector O-ring, then we'll just install it right into the fuel rail. Now we're going to reinstall the fuel rail with injectors back into the engine. Rock that right into place. So we'll slide right in. Once we have both fuel rails on, we'll need to install our crossover. We will tighten down our rails. Plug in all of our injectors. Tighten all of our connections. One thing you'll want to do with this connection here is align this up so that our fuel connection is not in a bind and it's in the correct positioning. We'll then tighten our connection back here. One important thing to note when installing these crossover connections, We want to put just a little bit of grease just inside that to lubricate that, so that when we do make our connection, it's lubricated and makes a good, nice, tight seal. Now that we've got everything torqued, installed, we need to make our last connection here on the fuel port. Make sure all of our fittings are tight. We'll then need to prime the fuel system by cycling the key 5 times, letting it sit 30 seconds between each key on and key off. Make sure to check for fuel leaks everywhere we've made a connection. At the fuel dampers, at our fuel connection here, and both ends of the fuel rail. Good to go. I don't see any leaks.
Thank you for watching our video. I want to thank Josh and Eric from A2Speed, and you can visit our eBay store or stevewhiteparts.com. Thank you again.